Thanks for coming. Best Places to Lead show. I am your host, Jerry McNamara. I'm grateful that you've decided to press play. So listen, we are on a mission to positively impact 5 million people. We have the first year down. It used to be over the next 5 years. We're now down to 4. Trajectory is good. We're still headed in the right direction. And so here's the point. I have never met anyone who showed up to work and said, you know what, I'd really like to suck today. However, there are plenty of people that are ineffective. And that's why we created this show, that leaders could learn from one another. We could have our teeth bashed in. No one else has to get their teeth bashed into. We can point behind us and say, Cameron, Hamza, watch for that little pothole right there so that you don't have to trip and fall too. And so my goal is that we will work with senior leaders inside fast-growing, best places to work companies to create compelling companies that outperform, because it's way more fun. It's way more interesting. If you're good at home, you can be great at work. And if you're good at work, you can be great at home. And so that's really what we're after here together. I'm super grateful because I like to congratulate people who make, the Inc. fastest growing list. I did that twice. I know how hard it is. These guys have done it. And so I had reached out to Cameron and he responded. And we ended up in a series of dad jokes that people were dying to get into their business, because their business is urns for people who have passed away or pets who have passed away. And while it's a very grave and serious and emotional topic, there is also some humility and humor that has to go along with it. And so when I met these guys, it turned into a couple dad jokes to like, I think these guys might be fun to have on the show. And since I have spent some time with them, I do believe that they're going to be really great on the show. So welcome Cameron Allahverdi and Hamza Khan of geturns.com. And so when I think about why I invite people to the show, these guys, there were 3 things that I wanted to really hit on. The first one is they have a unique partnership. And we're going to hear from Hamza how his family has been in this business. I think his grandfather started it in 1967, if I have that correct. Hamza, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. But how it formed, there's some cultural differences, there's some geographic differences. I want to hear about that, how those things came together. The second one was, how dealing in death, it really impacts your approach to business and, in my opinion, also to life. When you think about things in terminal places, it actually allows you to maybe laugh at things that we thought were serious before. And so I want to get some of those insights too. And then I'm really intrigued. Here are guys that, sell urns and creative jewelry for remains, and they have built a Facebook audience of 137,000 people. So I'm always amused when people are like, I don't know what I would post. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to attract an audience. Why would people be interested? I want you guys to share what you've learned in the way of that. So listen, Hamza, get us started. Your family has been in this business. Tell me about the American dream, because you guys came here and then you started to set up shop. Give us the background for us.
Sure, yeah. And thank you for having us. Basically, my family has been in the metal business since 1967. My grandfather started the metal business and he used to create metal urns, but at the same time, he also did other metal products, brass and aluminum. And my father then joined my grandfather and later on started his own company where he would make luxury metal furniture and home decor for large American corporations. And he would sell those to them. And then near 2008, my father chanced upon on urns. And because he had his background into very high quality, high tasteful design metal furniture, he thought that the urn industry needed an overhaul. And that is when he launched the company called Love Urns. And he started designing very different, modern, beautifully made metal cremation urns. And so, that he was the second generation. And then when I joined in, I started working with my father, trying to expand the company and growing. And that is when the idea for Get Urns came in. So, it was an interesting time. It was an interesting partnership. We were looking for warehouses and we were calling multiple people looking for a warehouse in Dallas, Texas. And one of those people happened to be Cameron, who picked up the call. And
Hold on. And by the way, I love this story because he picked up the phone after hours.
yes,
And I think that's I think that's only like so interesting, such like the entrepreneurial, like I'm still sitting at the office. Of course, I'm going to answer the phone because maybe there's an opportunity on the other end of the line. And as I thought about that, I ran a construction business that was high growth as well. And what became one of our biggest customers, the same thing happened. I was working late at the office and I picked up the phone and Kurt called and we struck up a relationship. And next thing you know, we were doing millions of dollars with them. And I just love that part of the story that Cameron's there grinding it out and picks up the phone and sparks a wonderful relationship. Keep going. Sorry, Hamza.
Oh, you're good. So yeah, he picked up the phone and we scheduled a warehouse visit the next day. And the rest is history. We started working with their company. They were doing fulfillment for us. And then slowly when the idea for Get Earns formed, and I thought more because the idea was to revolutionize the earn industry, to make earns more accessible, more interesting, more personal, and be able to bring them to families easier, to give them something more, to never say no to a family, give them something personalized, something simple, yet something beautiful, something pretty, something that they can make their own. That was the whole idea. And with Cameron's background into printing, and we gelled up really well. And something very unique that really affirmed this belief was his genuineness and how trustworthy of a person we felt he was, which he is. But I think that's one quality that separates everything else from a person is how much you can trust them. That's what you need in a business partner, is the level of trust you can give them. So
I think that's super important, right? Let's dive down that hole a little bit because, culturally, your family's from India. That's where the factory is.
yes.
And I thought it was really interesting. I mean, you were soliciting bids from not just Cameron. I mean, although, maybe a front runner because of, a values alignment. But something that you shared with me that I thought was really interesting was he had a bid that was too low. And you went back to him and said, Cameron, we've got to talk about that. Share that story because I think it's extraordinary. Most people approach things in transactional ways, and that was a very transformational approach. And so I'd love to hear about that. And then, is that coming from a cultural point of view, from your family's point of view, from your personal values? How did you come to that decision to say, Cameron, we got to talk about your bid?
Sure. So the first bid that we received from Cameron, because we wanted to get how many pallets they can keep of our products in their warehouse. So we wanted a rental per pallet and also a pick, pack, and ship fee per product, because we wanted them to open every product, check it, and then pack it and ship it, not just pick and ship. So the quote we received, we did our numbers and we thought it's impossible based on expenses in America and based on how things move. They will not be able to make money. Now, it does stem from a family and cultural perspective, because again, coming from my dad, he has always taught me that it's important that everybody you do business with and people who work with you or for you, everybody needs to prosper in a business. Because if a link breaks, I mean, at the end of the day, if he would not be able to make ends meet, he would not be able to service us. So we all need to benefit in a business, not just us. So it would not make sense to accept a bid where I know he would end up losing money or not making any. He should also benefit from the new business that we are getting in. So that is when we went back to him and said, hey, man, this is not going to work out. You need to look at your numbers again. And it was an interesting conversation. Yeah.
I love that. One of the things that I've always thought about in running businesses, is this fair and is this reasonable? Right? It's just a guiding light of like a litmus test for me. Because at the end of the day, I want people around me to be profitable.
Exactly.
Because when I call them, I want them to look down at the phone and not think, oh crap, it's Jerry calling. I made a bad deal with them. I want them to be like, oh my God, it's Jerry. This is going to be awesome. Like, we have this great partnership. This is awesome. But I do think that it's unique because, especially in America, Hamza, that's why I was asking culturally. And, that's not to say that, people don't have those same approaches or values here in the US. I certainly would have probably done the same thing. That's why it struck me as extraordinary. And yet a lot of times people look at things as a finite pie. We're going to whack the pie up and you take one half of the pie. I'm going to take the other half, instead of thinking, no, let's bake a bigger pie together and let's figure out how we slice that thing up.
Yeah, I also think it also comes from the fact that we believe, and again, this again comes back to to the family, even my grandfather, going back to my grandfather. We believe in long-term relationships,
Mm.
be it suppliers, customers, or our colleagues. We believe in long-term relationships, and long-term relationships are only possible with people when they see long-term growth with you, not a short-term, quick. You make some money and you're out of it.
Is that something that you talk about on the front end? Because, I know you have a unique partnership with Cameron, but you're also selling through distributors, through Love Urns. I mean,
For
I
sure.
think that's a business philosophy that everyone could benefit from. Aligned, values. I think sometimes people talk about like a rising tide lifts all ships, except for, when their ship starts to rise, they hope everyone else's, tide falls. And so what does that look like for you? Because I think as a core foundational business philosophy, it's something that I align with, but not everyone does. So what were those things as you were developing your partnership with Cameron and having your company's, long-term history? What does that look like that you're looking for in the marketplace?
Yeah, it is something we talk about. It is a philosophy that we really focus on. For example, if I go back, we have very in our factory we have a very low turnaround, and we have people who started working for us in '88 before I was even born, and they're still there. They're still working. There are people who my father took over from my grandfather's factory when he retired, who joined in '77, '78, who are still working there because again, at the end of the day, it's all about creating a community and making sure everybody is prospering. Similarly to our distributors, we have had long-term relationships with so many distributors, and that is how we all grow together. Because the better services and the better products we provide to our distributors, the better prices and profit margins we give to them, the more they can sell our products, the better they can service their customers who will end up buying our products. So it is a philosophy which is mutually beneficial for all of us
Yeah.
long run. We are not trying to, trying to gather all the profits for ourselves because that just does not work long term and it
No.
won't.
I think it's interesting. I saw Matt Kleinrock pop on. I know he has a long-term thinking philosophy as well. How does that work, Hamza, as you're like thinking about it on the distributorship side? It, I mean, are you interviewing people to say whether we're going to take them on or not take them on? Is there alignment here? Because, I've said this a number of times. I've made more money in my career saying no and staying disciplined than I have saying yes. And it's because I know who I am. I know what my values are. I know when someone's going to be a pain in the ass and when they're not going to be, on point for us. And so what does that look like for you? Because I think sometimes, greed does get out in front of us, the almighty American greenback dollar, people get super pumped up about. But at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying what you're doing and there's not a long-term, ecosystem of success, what's your approach to that?
For sure, and that's a good topic that you brought up because we it is not that easy to become our distributor because we have to align our values also to the person who will sell our products. It is very important. So yes, greed does come in, but we have a very strong value system when it comes to selecting our distributors because the distributor needs to align his values with ours. The product values, how to sell our products, how to keep the market in equilibrium about our products, how to approach our products. Because again, I think I mentioned last time, our products are different from rest of the urns you see in the market because we go for a much higher quality product with
Mhm.
much more design sense, better finishes, high quality metals are being used. So it is important that all of these values of a product are being translated to their end customer and they're being educated. So yeah, there's a form that everybody needs to fill. We spend a lot of time in doing research on the company that is applying to become our distributor. We meet them personally in trade shows, and it takes some time before somebody is accepted as a distributor. And what we also try to do is we make sure that a region is not saturated.
Right.
So we won't have too many distributors in one state. So the slots, we keep them as limited so that everybody is able to profit. Nobody's crossing each other's turfs. I think
Yeah.
that's important.
I think it's important too. Cameron, when you got a call from Hamza and said, "Hey, I think you probably should need to revisit your bid and your pricing," What were you thinking at that point in time? Because that's fairly unique in the US to say like, you probably need to raise your price and your bid.
So at first I was like, oh crap, there's a problem, because that's how they entered it. It was, hey, we have a problem with your bid. And I was like, oh, I knew I was over. I mean, I was young. We were young and aggressive and hungry and wanted the business and needed the business. And then when they showed me where I was too low, and even though I was very close to industry standard, the description was they went back to the history of the product and how delicate it is and how important it is to the families, and the reason why we hand inspect points of inspection on every single product. And at the core of it, he said, if you guys are not seeing the value and making, the profit that you need to make, will you take care of our product as if you were an extension of us? So I, wiped the sweat off my forehead, and in that exact moment, I went home that night and I told my wife, I don't know what it is, but I want to work with this family for the future. I launched my first business the day after I graduated college. And this is like my third iteration. And I've had a lot of lessons along the way. But the thing that I've gotten pretty decent at is when you see something in someone, the values that are, outwardly pouring, you want to be a part of that. And that stems from the factory all the way to like our staff here. And it becomes something that you want to be a part of, you want to be around. So yeah, it was a shock at first because no one has ever done that. I feel like most people would, leave a meeting and be like, man, we got them. They don't know what they're charging us. So it was interesting. It was really, really interesting.
See, Matt, I think one of the things that I think about is it would have just been easy for you to just accept the bid, be what it was, and continue on. And yet that long-term thinking guides your actions. And I think it's a piece that I find people miss, which is if I don't have a North Star, then where am I headed? And no one can like latch onto my business because we don't know where we're going. And so I don't know, is that exciting or not? The other thing that I think about, Cameron, to your point, and, Hamza had more intimate knowledge about this industry, but, I shared with you a ring that my father gave me that his father gave him. And I'm not a very nostalgic person, but this is something that's very important to me. My father and I share a name. My father gave it to me on my 40th birthday. And when my grandfather gave it to my dad, the jeweler misspelled his name. They only had one R. And so when I look at the inside of this, I think, that's amazing. And you guys live in a world where there is zero tolerance for mistakes. I mean, I couldn't imagine, my mom passed away, and, Cameron, I shared this with you. I think we still have her ashes or some of her ashes on my sister's mantle in whatever like little package it came in. And, we haven't done anything with it. But I certainly would be upset if they had misspelled my mom's name on the urn that we had just gotten, because you're now double revisiting something that is super emotional. And so there is a zero tolerance for, missing on that. Hamza, tell me a little bit. We went through COVID, right? And we're trying to import products. We're trying to keep the factory going. You said we have about 400 people at the factory. We're just about to upgrade from about 32,000 to 200,000 square feet. Sky's the limit going forward. 1,500 potential people that we could bring into the factory over time. I'm certain that probably wasn't your thinking at the time when COVID happened and kind of the brakes hit on everything. Like, how are we going to get the product? How do we keep the factory going? What were you thinking about in just keeping the business moving in the right direction when COVID happened?
Sure. Yeah, it was a very difficult time. It was a very difficult time for everybody in all aspects. We were standing here in an empty warehouse, which we had never seen empty ever, because the factory in India was closed. There was a curfew imposed and everything was shut down. There was no imports or exports happening. So it was it was a very strange time where it was important to keep everybody together. Even though we didn't know what the next day would look like, we still had to keep everybody's hopes high. Everybody in the factory, they needed to be told, or we had to ensure that they felt that they're secure. Not how, we didn't know how, but we just had to make sure that they felt secure and that their futures were secure and that we will work things out. And that is exactly what happened. For 1 to 2 months, when there was no work, we were one of the only few factories who did not cut anybody's salaries in India. Everybody received their full salaries without any work being done.
Wow.
We used all our savings up, and we made sure once that happened, and then the slowly, some portion or a small percentage of people were allowed to work, people came in and their productivity was 4 times. They didn't want to leave. They wanted to make sure that they can produce as much as possible or as much as is required. And the spirits were all-time high because they felt that connection, the family connection that we have been talking about for years and making a strong bond. They felt it because nobody who was working for us felt the financial aspects of COVID in their lives. For them, nothing changed. So I think that was a beautiful moment, and we still had a lot of issues. There were raw material issues, shipping issues, which continue till today. And but we all fought against it together. We all found ways around it together, and we all helped each other. Same thing goes for here in our Dallas warehouse, and also we have a European warehouse. Same thing goes for there. People, if there was a time I was here, there was a time when everybody in this warehouse was sick. It was me and Cameron and one more gentleman. We were engraving and shipping.
Wow.
So because we just had to, because people needed products. So we 3 were doing work of 16 people. We would come in at 6 a.m. and just wear masks and just do what had to be done. And that was the need of the hour, and we did. And that was beautiful.
I think it's interesting, or one thing that struck me during COVID was there's so many businesses that talk about, oh, we're a big family, right? And then when stuff got hard, they went like this: oh, we only have one sandwich, I'm going to keep it for myself. Well, I don't know about you guys, but if we're really a family, I'm cutting that sandwich in half and then into quarters and then into eighths to make sure that everyone can get a little nibble of the pie. And I just felt like it was so disingenuous, all of these companies who espoused values and family first. And then it was like, oh, sorry, everyone, we don't have any work and we don't know what's going to happen. So go home to your family and we'll pay you at some point in time, or we'll bring you back at some point in time. And not to say that it wasn't a very hard time, but I think, Hamza, the approach that you shared, I think, is in alignment with your values. It is pretty unique because it's what you did with Cameron, and you said, hey, we got to love our people and treat them as whole people. It's amazing stuff. I think that's great.
Jerry, what you just said, all those things, and I recognize the reason for this, like that I've learned from their family. These are all stories. These are stories that then get ingrained into the culture of the company.
Yes.
And since one thing that we do is we're very transparent with our staff, and we're always talking to our people about where we're going, what we're expecting, where we've been in the past. And then what happens is that bond just grows stronger, the family bond that you're talking about, because everyone here knows those stories. Yes. So when we hear about what happened in the factory in India, it can only make you feel inspired here. And then the people start to recognize that the same thing is happening here. And this is who we are, which is a bit different for a lot of people. When a lot of people join, they're almost skeptical at first. And I'm like,
is this real? Is this for real?
I've had to say, like, I know that you are probably from somewhere else, but seriously, is there anything you need to do your job better?
Yeah.
We will get it for you. We will buy it for you. How comfortable are you in your office? Do you want a standing desk or a sit? It's just every little thing. And then we act on it. And then they realize, oh, I'll be catered to.
That's right. I think that's loyalty and trust, right? When words are followed through with actions, then it's like, oh, these are the people that actually do what they say they're going to do. And, if you're a leader, I would encourage you to take this note, because Cameron said it so beautifully. The true values of a company are the stories that are told when you're not there. And so if you are not, as the leader, sharing, here's what we celebrate, because values are what we celebrate and what we don't tolerate. you better be sharing the stories of like, here's what lines up and here's what does not line up. This is not okay. And if you do that well, you'll just reinforce those values and people will say, oh, well, that's what's normal. That's what's expected here. And that to me is the brilliance of building a really strong culture, because then it becomes self-monitoring, because everyone knows that's not how we do it. That's not the way of what we do. And they manage the culture for you, which eases that leadership burden for you. And I think that's super cool. Cameron, you're at the front lines of like the distribution side of this. And so I have, some interesting things. I mean, you're the one on the front lines dealing with death on a daily basis, right? Or people's emotional grief, for sure. And it's got to take a special person to do that at the front lines. We talked about this. It's customer intimacy on steroids. And it's got to take copious amounts of empathy to do that. How does that impact your hiring process? How do you hire for empathy for the right person that's going to actually have a caring ear on the line and help people get to making a good decision?
Sure. It is definitely something that, has taken some time to get better and better at. Every interview that I do, I'm getting better at finding the questions and the answers that kind of show and open up. It's almost now to a point where it doesn't matter about your work history or where you've been. I spend, I would say 80% of a 2-hour interview just talking about personal goals and ambitions, and tell me about your kids and, your spouse, and what are things. And then where I find I've had the most success is by myself showing vulnerability in those interviews, letting them know what I'm struggling with. And when you start to recognize that an interviewee is recognizing that and then opening up themselves with it, that's a really good sign that they are who can take the phones and deal with our customers. You got to remember, this purchase is probably the most emotional purchase you'll ever make in your life, because technically it is the last purchase you make for someone, your loved one. And so it takes 2 to 3 minutes to take an order over the phone, but our average phone call is 16 to 17 minutes. Because we end up connecting with the customer, or they may need a lot more time to get through those engraving lines about their loved one's life, because they may be overcome with emotion or need some time. So we end up really holding the hand of the customer. One thing that is interesting is that death is something that we, as specifically Americans, just do not want to talk about. So there's a lot of customer education that has to go into it. So in a typical phone call, we are educating a customer. We are then acting as essentially a therapist in the moments, meeting them in their stage of grief, wherever it may be.
Yep.
And so it's my responsibility to start to recognize, hey, is my customer service rep, potentially getting burned out? How do I give some time to them to recover? So like if we have a really emotional call, go take a 10-minute walk, outside, or I may say, take the rest of the day off. I'll take the calls the rest of the day. We split the work because it is a lot. I think one thing we found coming out of the pandemic is just how demanding, like, first responders, mental health was. I look at it as the same way. Like, I've got to protect the mental health of my staff and myself. And when I share all those things up front in the interview, because I need people to know what they're walking into. And if they're just as excited when they walked in at the end of the interview, then they're most likely the right person.
I love that. I have shared many times that I like to hire from the scratch and dent aisle, because business is hard, right? If you grew up in a white gloved environment, I don't know, not to say that you can't do it, but what's going to happen when you get punched in the face for the first time? And so I like people who can share, here's the hardest thing that I've been through in my life, and here's how I made it to the other side. And, like you, Cameron, I've been in interviews, many of them, not just like a couple, where they've cried, and I've been vulnerable about, like, here's how I grew up, here are my insecurities, here are the things that I'm thinking about. And when you connect with people on that level, you change the dynamic of what the relationship is. and it's not just a job, right? My first value is love your people and treat them as whole people. You change that dynamic. So, one of the things that you shared with me is an interesting approach to how you break down vulnerability, that you don't really like interviews, something about spirit animals. Tell me more about how you get people to open up a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, we start with the very generic questions. I would say I spend 5 to 10 minutes just trying to ease the nerves of both of us in the room. And the truth is, I don't particularly enjoy or like the standard interview process, because we are both, me and them are going to try to be our best selves in that moment. And really what we have to remember is we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing I like to say is, I tell them, you've heard, you need to leave your emotions at the door. And almost everybody responds with, yes, I know that. And I say, well, that's bullshit. Truthfully, because then what is happening is a company is asking you to not be yourself when you enter into this building. And I look at it as I'm borrowing 8 hours of your time.
Mm.
And if I'm borrowing 8 hours of your time, let's make this place enjoyable. If we have to be here, right? We all have to make money and succeed. But if we're going to do it, let's do it together, happy, try to make the best of everything. There's going to be emotional days. And then I really start to ask them, like, name an animal that you kind of connect with. And that one question has told me more about everyone here than any other question I could possibly ask. Because if the truth is, somebody can be a lion, somebody could be a hamster, somebody could connect with an elephant, and all those one-word answers tell a lot about a person. And what I'm really doing in that moment is I'm finding how I should communicate with them. It's a way for me to learn how best to approach them. What kind of do they have in their setting? So that little question has turned out to be probably the best tool for us.
I love that question. One of the strangest questions I ever asked was, if you were a chameleon, what would be your kryptonite?
And
right, someone texted me back later and they were like, plaid. I was like, that's a great answer. I think sometimes when you can get people to put their guards down, because you're right, people are on guard, rehearsed answers. What's the real person? I've hired people, I'm like, that is not the person that I interviewed. Like, I don't know where that person came from, but I messed. I apologize. Talk to me a little bit about, and you said it, if we have to be here, let's make sure that we are in a happy place. We're having fun. One of my life goals is to have more fun than anyone else. How do you maintain a happy workplace when people are on these emotional calls or looking at these, emotional, beautiful urns that they're shipping out and taking stewardship over? Any tips on how to do that or how you've done that?
Sure. It starts with taking a lot of the typical things that a business has to do. So like morning meetings, stand-up meetings, and then going a step further in like how you organize the office, how you set up rooms for communication. From that, we do a lot of silly things, like such a simple idea, but we have a big whiteboard in the break room. And every week there's it's either a ridiculous question in which people have to answer like something that is so absurd, or it's a story that everyone has to continue the story with one sentence. That kind of brings a lot of camaraderie. We do a creative Friday every month. So like I put people in teams of 2 that typically don't work in the same department. And we had a collage making competition with cutting out of magazines. It was ridiculous. And what they came up with was absurd, and everyone loved it. And I was really nervous about doing this because I thought people would be like, oh, this is cheesy.
Right.
They all asked me, when are we going to do it again? And then the last thing we do that I didn't know was going to be so impactful is we really celebrate people's birthdays.
Nice. Tell me more.
So we everyone gets to choose exactly what restaurant the food gets catered into. We bring in a dessert that they, they curate their birthday day
I love
and
it.
what they want, when they want it, how they want it. And everyone writes notes and we all meet at the end. And a part of it is we don't sing happy birthday sometimes because we were forcing it at the beginning. And when you start to just have that monotone singing, we took that away. But one thing that is interesting is everyone has to give a piece of life advice if it's their birthday. And that it started small, but that now has become kind of the thing to look forward to. But what it ended up happening is I've had 6 or 7 employees come to my office and just say, hey, I want you to know that that's the most anybody's ever celebrated for my birthday. And I was thinking like, wow, that is interesting because it's so easy. It seems like actually the easiest things are the most impactful.
I think it's so important. I was on a call earlier today with one of my C-suiters, and they have crushed every number over the last 3 years. And his feedback to me as we're prepping for their quarterly planning session was, we haven't celebrated very much, yet we're doing very, very well. And I thought that was really telling. I mean, they're so busy. It's easy to get myopic, especially as fast as you guys are growing, as fast as, we were growing. It's easy. And you have to imbue that into the culture to say, we are going to celebrate our people. It's part of what we do. And we're not just going to turn out great numbers. We're going to turn out great people and great experiences too. And, it's that whole mindset of how do you create that compelling company? You are borrowing people's time and talents. I think you said it really, really well. I actually sent it out to my list earlier this week. Maybe I stole it from you, Cameron. I can't remember where I get all this stuff. But if we don't understand that we have to be continually building that trust and a place where people are willing to invest their time and talents with us, then we've missed the mark as the leader. We have to continually do that. And we can't take a day off. We can't nope, here's the place that you are. We're going to celebrate you. We're going to love you. And, someone asked me recently, like, what does creating a compelling company mean? I was like, it's a really good question. It's a place that is so fun, really interesting, aligned with your vision and your values that you get surprised every 2 weeks when you get a paycheck. Not that we would ever espouse not paying our people, but it is so fun. It is so exciting that you're like, holy shit, I got paid to do this. This is incredible. That to me is what I think every company should aspire to do, where people are like, I do this for free. This is incredible.
Just because this was another moment and this was just an idea. We had a new lady join 4 weeks ago. Well, 2 weeks ago, her daughter broke her arm. And I just was kind of joking. I said, hey, have her come up and we'll all sign her cast. And sure enough, last Friday, she has a 5-year-old daughter, and this girl came around to everybody and we all signed her cast. And it is, again, so small, but the impact that I feel like now that, our employee feels more connected as a family.
100%. You should have fun at work. I tell this story. Zach Mitchell, who's the best COO that I've ever experienced. He was my COO at the construction company. I used to wrestle him on the production floor because we wanted everyone to know it's okay to have fun here. We may take our work really, really seriously and we are very focused, but listen, it's okay to be silly. And he's a little jittery. I'd hide behind quarters, people would wait for me to jump out and I can't wait. April 1st is his birthday. I will call him and Cameron, I will sing him happy birthday in my very worst voice that I can sing. And I do it every year for him. Right. But I think sometimes people get so focused, like, oh, we can't mess this up. Oh, the company's growing so quickly. You better have fun while you're doing it. Right. You guys know this in the lesson, this is terminal. My mom, who passed away coming up on 3 years, she said, son, no one makes it out of life alive. Like, oh, good point, Mom. Right. I mean, you have to, if you accept living, you have to accept dying. It's just a part of life. And so, having those conversations along the way are super important. Guys, talk to me about, because, you approach this from different views, right? But what has surprised you most about running a high growth business?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you read textbooks and there's 1,000, books on how to be a better business person and, self-growth. And you keep hearing, and especially I feel like in the last 5 years, the mental health conversation has been very prominent. And you hear all these things and you believe, yes, that would be nice if we put it into practice. But for me personally, when I started to embrace that sense of vulnerability and really change my focus to be mostly about people and realize that almost every business problem can relate back to people.
Yeah.
And when I put more effort into people, the rewards were there. But that kind of goes against what you think. You believe that if you make more product and the product is good, then it will naturally sell. But as we invest more into our people, we are seeing that success. So I was always, I guess, a little nervous to make that kind of jump. Am I spending too much time coaching and this or that? But it has proven itself to be, the point of business.
I love that, because I've run 5 businesses in 5 different industries, B2B, B2C, products and services. I've never been the technical leader, right? And I tell people all the time, my product has always been people, because leading people is the same everywhere. And I think when you can get to that mindset past, oh, what do the numbers say? What do the widgets say? How many more things can we put out? It's like, no, how do I get the tools, time, and training for my people to be successful? And when you do that, as I always say, love your people, treat them as whole people, everything just falls into place. It's like, oh, Hamza talked about this. People came back, they quadrupled the production. Why? Because people were happy to be there. Holy smokes, the company actually takes care of their people. I mean, I know all of these other people who didn't get taken care of. Boy, am I happy to be here. And I think that's a great one. Hamza, anything for you that surprise you?
Yeah, sure. I think we have grown really fast and we have seen that growth in front of our eyes. And I think something that has been really interesting for me that I have been a part of and tried to inculcate in everybody is how to bring different teams from different parts of the world with language barriers and cultural barriers, our India team to Europe team to American team, all together, everybody working together for one common goal.
Mm,
And that's growth of the company and everybody growing together. What surprised me is how seamlessly, slowly that started happening when we slowly started connecting people together and getting away from the middle. Because in the starting, I was kind of the middleman, taking information from this team, passing it on to the other team. But slowly and steadily, because we knew we could not do it suddenly, we could not just connect everybody together. It would slowly and steadily, we started connecting one person from the India team to the US team and started making groups of chat so they could chat to each other, breaking down the language barriers, sending voice notes as opposed to typing, because people
right.
can speak English very easily, but sometimes it can be difficult to type because of spelling errors, etc. So trying to study what are the pain points of communication and trying to eliminate them using technology and bringing people together. It's been amazing to see all teams
Love that.
working together, talking to each other, all towards one common goal is making beautiful products, sensitive products, and shipping them out, personalizing them and shipping them out to customers in a timely fashion.
I love that. I'll give Zach credit again. He came in and he said, when we get people talking, we're winning.
Mm.
And that's to your point. I think, I walk into some companies and they're a bit siloed. It's like, what do you mean you don't know the people over in manufacturing? Like you're in accounting, like you don't interface? Like, no, no, come on. We're going out to the manufacturing floor. And if we can get people talking, boy, it's hard to hate up close. Brene Brown always says that clarity is kindness, and it's hard to hate up close. So let's bring people real close together, because you foster a new understanding when you do that and you get people talking. Tell me about this, because, Cameron, you were just talking about burnout, mental health. I just came back across an email that I had sent to my leadership team when we had gone from 7 million to 30 million in 3.5 years. And I was telling them I was on my way to vacation. I apologize. I was not at my best, that I was on the verge of burnout. And protecting your mental health is super important, especially it's hard enough being an entrepreneur and a senior leader. In my experience, it's harder to do it in a fast growth company, right? Because your margin for error is just coming at you faster and faster and faster. Any tips, guys, like tactical things that you're doing to protect your mental mindset?
Yeah. So one is being upfront with that vulnerability at the beginning in the interview process allows you to continue that as you keep going. So I want myself, but my team to always kind of give me the pulse of where they're at. But two, by being upfront, you start to create partnerships with people that want to help get you out of that. So we have this thing called, "Hey, are you in the woods?" And it's just a question we have. Hey, are you in the woods? And people ask each other that because when you're in the woods, you can't see the way out. And what got you there doesn't matter. It could be something you're dealing with personally or whatever. And it's just a really nice way of saying, like, are you capable today? Like, are you there? Because that's super important. Something for me as a business owner, and I haven't even told Hamza this yet, but we had spring break a week and a half ago. And as you know, like business owners and leaders, we're always communicating and not wanting to step away. And I left on the road trip, and about 5 minutes into the road trip, somebody pings me on Slack asking a detailed question. And within 15 seconds, Hamza jumps on there and says, "Oh, hey, by the way, Cameron has just left for vacation. I'll take all the questions that you can send me because I really want him to get the rest he needs." And Hamza, I didn't tell you, but that set the tone for my vacation. It really opened up and gave me the ability to really refresh. And guess what? I came back 4 times as effective because I took that rest. So we almost push that on people too. We want them to do that.
I love it. You have to have each other's back. I think that's a key piece. People talk about it, but don't necessarily do it. I say this all the time when senior leaders are texting me or calling me. They're not calling to chit chat. They're calling because something has gone sideways. And so, yeah, I'm going to call them back. I got your back. And I think that's just a reflection of your values to say, no, I'm humbled by this journey that we're on and we're in it together. And if you need me, and I'm going to get you. And that's just the way it is. Thank you, Hamza, for doing that for Cameron, because those are what build extraordinary relationships. I think back about, I had a guy that worked for me, and he walked in one day and he shut the door to my office. And I thought, oh goodness, where is this going to go? And he said, "Man, I just got to tell you, I'd take a bullet for you if someone was going to shoot you." And I thought, Tom, I hope no one ever is going to try and shoot me, but I am from Philadelphia, so it is possible.
Yeah.
But it's when you build those world-class relationships, it goes beyond that. Anything is possible. You can go on the rocket ship. And that's the care and concern that we have for our people. What I have found extraordinary leaders do for their people, it is that care and concern. Do you give a shit about your people? And when you do that, it's like, oh, easier to be a part of it. So
yeah, I seriously think we all need to remember as team leaders that we cannot ignore the human aspect of anybody. Everybody is a human being here. Everybody has good days, everybody has bad days, everybody has small and also very large problems in their lives. And a lot of problems, no matter how much we ask them, they cannot speak about them. People are private and they don't want to speak about them, but people have problems. So it's very important for us to realize that if somebody is not performing or if somebody is having a bad day, there must be something going on. They're not just a bad employee, or they're not just distracted because of nothing. There has to be a reason behind it. We need to try and figure out if we can help them, or if not, just give them a break. But we cannot, at least us in our company, we don't have a very corporate culture. We have a very family oriented culture. If somebody is not feeling it in any aspect of the business, we realize it, we take action in a very familial way, as opposed to writing somebody down or something like that. I think
I think grace is just a great mindset for leadership. And I think that's really what you're talking about, Hamza, when people go like, oh, okay. People don't suddenly show up and suddenly be a poor employee. It's like, no,
Exactly.
something's going on here. Either their kid's sick or, dad's sick, whatever it might be. Let me get to the root cause of this and show some grace, because that's how you get buy-in. That's how businesses, in my opinion, we get it wrong constantly. I talk about, man, I have young kids. I want to show up when they have Thanksgiving meal, and I want to be there at Friendsgiving, but yet there's businesses that are like, no, Hamza, you can't go. It's like, I'll make up the hours. Why would you not want your people to go celebrate their kids and be with their, like, it just doesn't, it eludes my mindset. And yes, I'm a performance driven guy and I'm data hound, all of those things. However, I believe that is the best long-term strategy. If you're playing the infinite game, I'm not worried about a couple hours. I'm worried about the long term of performance. And if you can put your ego down to the side, it just becomes easier to trust your people and love your people and let them do what's right and going to bring out the best in them. But
Sure.
Guys like us, we don't necessarily align with the rest of the world. I'm okay with that, right? Because I'm comfortable with my approach. Fun stuff. Listen, I know you guys have to catch a flight. So I was going to talk about social media, but we'll shelve that for another time. If people want to find out more about Hamza and Cameron, where do we find you guys? How do we get more of you?
We have our LinkedIn profiles. You can visit our website. Yeah.
Those are
LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
And what's the best website to get you at? Get Urns, Love Urns. Both of those are good ones to go to.
Yes. Geturns.com and loveurns.com.
I love it. You guys were terrific. I am so grateful for the insights that you shared in such a sensitive topic. I mean, I think it's probably the most unique conversation that I've had on the show. Maria reminded me this is our 50th episode. So thank you for being on our 50th episode. Yeah, it's been super fun. You know what I tell people all the time? I have one of the greatest jobs in the world, which is every week for an hour a week, I get to find the smartest people that I can talk to, and they get to share the lessons that they've learned in running businesses. That's awesome. I get to learn every week from really smart, kind people. And so I'm super appreciative of you guys. So with all of that being said, I would tell you guys, go check out Hamza and Cameron, super interesting guys. Next week, here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do a solo episode. I think this is really an important topic. It's about easing the burden of leadership by using frameworks. Right. And so one of the things that we've learned in recessions, I think, in my opinion, we are in a recession. You can't see it until after the fact, but emotionally, consumer confidence is down. 91% of CEOs are bracing for cutbacks. And so we need to be thinking about those things. But only 9% of companies grow their revenues during the last 4 recessions. One of the hallmarks that they were able to do was they drove down the objectives and the clarity of the organization, what they were trying to achieve, to the front lines of the organization. And so I want to talk about, what's your decision-making framework? How are we allocating resources on opportunities? What's our financial model? What's our hiring philosophy? What's our compensation philosophy? Because if we take the time to actually write these things out, then we can go further, faster together. And we don't have to keep on explaining things to people. Here's why we do this. Here's why we do that. We just say, here's how we make decisions as a company. Here's the model and the rubric that we use. And then other people are able to do it. And the gift that we give ourselves back as leaders is we get to go on vacation without people calling us and saying, what should I do in this situation? And so those are the things that we'll be talking about next week. I did present this to my C-suite when they were in here in Jacksonville at the beginning of March. And they said to me, that's a presentation that you have to give on the show. And so that's what I'm going to do. It should be super fun. I'm grateful for all of you. Cameron, Hamza, thank you for your time. Guys, go catch your flight. We'll catch you on the flip.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.